What if everything you have been taught about success, the hustle, the grind, the idea that the person who works the most hours wins, was not just incomplete, but actively steering you away from the life you want? What if the model of success you have been chasing was designed for a different era, a different economy, a different kind of life, and nobody told you it no longer applies? I spent years chasing the version of success the world handed me. I hit most of the markers, and then I sat with what I had built and realized I had been running toward the wrong destination with extraordinary discipline. This audiobook is about redefining success, not as a self-help cliche, but as a precise, practical, deeply personal act of intelligence. Chapter 1. The Inherited Definition. Tariq graduated at the top of his class. This is not incidental. In his family, in his community, in the school that had shaped him. From the age of 5, academic excellence was the first and clearest language of success. It was the thing that produced approval, that generated pride at family gatherings, that drew the nods of relatives who had themselves navigated the same system and understood its currency. Tariq was not cynical about this. He genuinely enjoyed learning. He was not performing excellence. He was, in the truest sense, excellent. He loved the clarity of mathematics, the way a proof moved from premise to conclusion without ambiguity. But the definition of success that came with his excellence was not one he had chosen. It had been assembled around him, carefully and lovingly, by everyone who cared about his future. University, then a professional degree, then a prestigious employer, then upward movement within that employer, then financial security, then the visible markers of that security, a house, a car, a position of respect. It was a map, a clear, detailed, well-worn map, and for a long time Tariq followed it faithfully because it was the only map he had been given. By 30, he was a senior financial analyst at a firm that was respected in his field. He was earning well, he had the car and was working toward the house, by every measure. On the map he was succeeding. He was also, in a way he found very difficult to articulate, deeply dissatisfied. Not depressed, not in crisis, not ungrateful. He was acutely aware of his privilege, of the things he had that many people did not, but dissatisfied, as though he had arrived at a destination and found that the destination, close up, was not what the map had promised. The problem, he would eventually understand, was not the destination itself. It was that the destination had never been his to choose. He had been handed a definition of success before he was old enough to interrogate it, and he had been running toward it for 25 years without ever stopping to ask, is this what I actually want, or is it just what I was told to want? These are entirely different questions, and the answer to the second does not automatically answer the first. Chapter 2. The Culture of Hustle and Its Costs. At some point in the last 15 years, a new layer was added to the inherited definition of success. It arrived through social media, through the language of entrepreneurship, through the content produced by a generation of visible achievers who documented their rise and extracted from it a philosophy: work harder than everyone else, sleep less, sacrifice more, and success will come to those who outwork the competition. The hustle culture. It is not entirely wrong. Work ethic matters, persistence matters, the willingness to put in unglamorous hours when others have given up is a real differentiator. These are true things. But hustle culture, as a complete philosophy, contains several profound errors that it rarely acknowledges. The first error: it confuses activity with progress. Busyness and productivity are not the same thing. A person can be maximally busy, filling every waking hour with effort and urgency, and be making almost no progress toward the things that actually matter too. In fact, busyness is often a form of avoidance. The harder it is to sit still and think clearly about whether you are moving in the right direction, the more attractive the alternative of simply moving faster becomes. The second error, it is not sustainable and it does not tell you this. The body and mind that operate at maximum intensity for extended periods do not simply become tired. They degrade. Creativity declines before exhaustion is felt. Judgment deteriorates before the person knows it is deteriorating. The quality of decisions made by someone who has been grinding without adequate rest for months is measurably, demonstrably worse than the decisions made by someone who has protected their recovery. The hustle culture produces this degradation and then labels it resilience. The third error, and this is the most important one, it is entirely silent on the question of direction. Hustle culture tells you how hard to run. It says nothing about where you can apply maximum effort toward a destination that is wrong for you. The grind does not correct the destination. It just gets you there faster. Tariq was a person who had applied maximum effort, with considerable skill and discipline, toward a destination that had never been truly his. He had hustled toward someone else's success and arrived there. This is more common than anyone in the hustle space discusses. Chapter 3: What Success Actually Requires. Let me be clear about something before we go further. This audiobook is not an argument against ambition. It is not a case for mediocrity, for lowering expectations, for the comfortable smallness of reduced aspiration. It is not telling you to stop working hard or to abandon your goals or to accept less than you are capable of. It is making a different argument, that ambition without self-knowledge is a vehicle without a steering wheel. You can be enormously, ferociously ambitious, and that ambition can be directed toward the wrong life with the wrong metrics, toward achievements that will not produce the satisfaction you are working for. Self-knowledge is not soft. It is the hardest intellectual work a person can do, and the most underrated. It requires asking questions that are uncomfortable because their answers reveal gaps between who we think we are and who we actually are, between what we say we want and what our choices reveal we actually want, between the values we publicly claim and the values we are actually living. Success that produces genuine satisfaction, the kind that is not immediately replaced by the pressure to achieve the next marker, requires three things that hustle culture almost never discusses. Clarity about what you actually value, not what sounds good, not what produces approval, what you actually in your most honest self value in a human life. These might be conventional, financial security, recognition, achievement. They might not be depth in relationships, creative freedom, time, autonomy, contribution to something beyond yourself. Both are legitimate, but they point toward very different lives, and confusing one for the other is the source of much of the quiet dissatisfaction that exists in people who have, by external measure, succeeded. Clarity about your specific nature. You are not a generic human being. You have a particular configuration of strengths, limitations, energies, and needs that is unlike anyone else's. The life that works brilliantly for one person, the highly social, high visibility role, the solo deep focus work, the leadership position, the individual contributor, works brilliantly for them precisely because of their specific nature. Copied by someone with a different nature, the same life becomes a poor fit, worn uncomfortably, producing friction where there should be flow. Success that fits requires knowing your own shape, clarity about what you are willing to pay. Every version of success has a price, not just in effort and time, in trade-offs. The career that produces maximum income typically trades some degree of autonomy. The creative life that produces maximum freedom often trades financial security. The deeply relational life trades some achievement. None of these trades are wrong, but they must be made consciously. The person who does not examine the trade-offs of the success they are chasing will often arrive and find they have paid for something they did not know they were buying. Chapter 4: Tariq's Reckoning. The reckoning came on a Tuesday. Not a dramatic Tuesday. There was no crisis, no breakdown, no external event, just a Tuesday afternoon in his office, on the 37th floor of a building in Karachi. Looking at a spreadsheet that represented a significant analysis he had just completed. Good work, technically excellent, the kind of output his colleagues and superiors valued highly. And feeling nothing. Not tired, not sad, not frustrated, nothing, a blank, the completion of the task. Produced no satisfaction, no pride, no sense of having done something that mattered. It produced the functional equivalent of ticking a box. He sat with that blankness for a long time, and then he did something he had been avoiding for years. He opened a blank document on his computer and asked himself, in writing, the questions he had never allowed to stay still long enough to answer. What does success mean to me? Not to my parents, not to my industry, not to the version of me that performs competence for the world, but to me. What would I do if money were not the primary constraint? What does a day feel like when I am fully engaged, not just productive, not just efficient, but genuinely engaged? What have I built in my life that I am proud of in a way that has nothing to do with approval? He wrote for an hour. The answers surprised him. Some of them he had known, somewhere peripheral in his awareness, for years. Others emerged from the writing with a specificity that felt new, as though articulation had made real something that had only existed as a vague unease. What emerged with clarity he had not expected was this: Tariq did not value the position or the income as ends in themselves. He valued the problem-solving, the particular pleasure of taking a complex, tangled situation and finding the pattern in it. The intellectual satisfaction of clarity achieved from confusion. But he had been applying that capacity to problems he did not care about, to questions that had no meaning to him beyond the technical satisfaction of their resolution. He was using his real gift, his genuine, distinctive capacity, in service of results he did not find meaningful. The capacity was not wrong, the direction was. For the first time in years, he had the specific language for what was missing. Chapter 5: The Reorientation. Reorienting a life is not the same as abandoning it. This is the distinction that most people miss when they imagine what reclaiming their authentic version of success would require. They imagine it as a cliff, a leap from one thing into another with a terrifying gap in between. And because the leap feels too large, they don't take it. They stay on the side they know, and the quiet dissatisfaction continues. But most significant life changes do not happen at a cliff. They happen on a slope. Gradual, incremental shift in direction, so gradual in the early stages that the people watching cannot see it. Only the person living it can feel the difference. Tariq spent 6 months in the questioning phase, reading, thinking, having conversations with people whose lives looked like approximations of what he had identified as meaningful to him. He found in this period that the clarity he had articulated on that Tuesday was not a fantasy, it was actionable. There were organizations, specifically in the nonprofit and social enterprise space, that needed exactly the kind of financial and analytical thinking he had spent 12 years developing. The capacity was highly transferable, only the context needed to change. He did not resign dramatically. He began, while still employed, to take on pro bono work for 2 organizations whose missions he found genuinely engaging. The work was structurally similar to what he did every day. The difference in his level of engagement was immediate and significant. The blankness that had greeted the completion of excellent technical work was replaced by something he had nearly forgotten, the feeling that the work mattered, not to his career, to something. 18 months after that Tuesday, he had transitioned carefully, deliberately, without cliff jumping, into a role that combined financial strategy with impact. Measurement at a development organization. His income was lower, his title was less impressive to the relatives, his commute was the same. But when he completed his work, he did not feel blank. He felt the specific satisfaction of having used his genuine capacity in the direction of something real. This is the shape of authentic success, not always dramatic, not always visible from the outside as success at all, but recognized by the person living it as the right fit, the life that is theirs, shaped to their actual values, their actual nature, their actual definition of a well-spent human life. Chapter 6. Writing Your Own Definition. The definition of success that the world handed you was written by people who were not you. It was shaped by economic pressures, cultural values, historical accidents, and the collective experience of generations who faced different circumstances than you do. Some of it is wisdom, some of it is outdated, some of it was never applicable to your particular nature, even when it was current. You are allowed to rewrite it. Not carelessly, not as an excuse to avoid effort or responsibility, but deliberately, honestly, with the rigor you would apply to any important problem. Here is a framework for the rewrite. Begin with the question of deathbed regret. It is not morbid, it is clarifying. From the perspective of the very end, what would you need your life to have contained in order to feel that it was fully lived, not achieved in the conventional sense, contained, experienced, contributed? This question strips away the noise of social comparison and short-term status and gets to something more durable. Then ask, what version of success would I choose if no one I knew would ever find out about it, if there were no social media, no family gatherings, no markers visible to anyone but you? What would you build? What would you pursue? What would a good day look like? This question separates your authentic values from the performed ones. Then ask, what am I genuinely good at, not just trained to do, but constitutionally suited for? The intersection of what you value, what you are genuinely suited for, and what the world will pay you for or support you in. That intersection is not always narrow. It is, in fact, often richer than the inherited definition allowed you to see. But you cannot find it without doing the first two steps. Write the definition. Actually write it, not in someone else's language, in yours. Specific, honest, unglamorous terms. A successful life for me is one in which, and then finish that sentence without the words prestige, impressive, or what others think. Then build toward that. Not perfectly, not all at once, but consistently with the same energy you would have given to the inherited definition, directed now toward the one that is actually yours. Epilogue. Success is not a universal destination. It is a personal one. The person who defined it for you before you were old enough to define it yourself did their best. They gave you what they had. They pointed you toward what had worked for them, or what they had believed would work, or what they had wished they had done. They were not wrong to try. But you are old enough now to take the map from their hands and redraw it. The version of success that will actually satisfy you, that will produce, at the end of a life, the specific feeling of having spent it well, is not the one on the poster. It is not the one with the most zeros. It is not the one that produces the most impressive answer to the question, what do you do? It is the one that fits you. Specifically, precisely, in the particular shape of who you actually are. Tariq found his, Rania found hers, Sana, RM, Omar, they all found versions of the life that belonged to them, not by abandoning responsibility, but by bringing their genuine selves into contact with it. You can too. It begins with a question. What does success actually mean to you? Take the time to answer it honestly. Your whole life is on the other side of that answer.